A homeless girl saves a millionaire from an accident. A few days later, he's stunned when he sees 3 police officers knocking on his door. The roar of the V8 engine echoed along the winding road as Jack Thompson adjusted the rearview mirror of his Porsche 911 GT3. Night was quickly falling over Los Angeles, and the first drops of rain began to blur the gleaming windshield of the sports car. His fingers tapped impatiently on the leather steering wheel, his mind still buzzing from the heated argument he'd had with his brother Michael just minutes before. "You're blind, Jack, completely blind." Michael's words still echoed in his head. He pressed the accelerator harder, feeling the adrenaline surge through his veins as the speedometer climbed past 75 mph. The rain was now falling more intensely, turning the road into a dark and treacherous mirror. Jack knew he should slow down, but something inside him refused to yield. It was as if each additional mile per hour could distance him from his brother's accusations, from the suspicions, the lies, or were they truths? His phone vibrated on the center console. It was Michael again. Jack took his eyes off the road for a split second to silence the device, and that was all fate needed. The curve was sharper than he remembered. The wet asphalt turned into a sheet of ice beneath the high-performance tires. Jack jerked the steering wheel, but it was too late. The car skidded, spinning like a wild top. The world moved in slow motion. The headlights cut through the darkness at impossible angles as the Porsche plunged down the embankment. The sound of twisting metal mixed with the shattering of glass in a grim symphony. 1, 2, 3 rolls. Jack lost count as his body was violently tossed around inside the cabin, protected only by the airbags exploding around him. The silence that followed was deafening. The Porsche, once a symbol of power and luxury, now lay like a twisted wreck at the bottom of the ravine. Smoke began escaping the crumpled hood, and the smell of gasoline filled the damp night air. Jack was unconscious, still strapped in by his seatbelt, a thin trail of blood trickling down his forehead. That was when small footsteps echoed in the darkness. Emily had always liked exploring the area around the highway overpass where she and her mother had improvised a shelter. At just 6 years old, she knew every corner of that forgotten stretch of the city, as well as the back of her tiny hand. During one of her nighttime expeditions, she heard the crash. Her wide eyes followed the path of destruction the car had left behind as it fell. Without hesitation, she started down the embankment, her small hands clinging to the wet vegetation. Her heart pounded in her chest, not from fear, but from a determination that seemed far too big for her small body. Approaching the wrecked car, Emily spotted Jack through the shattered window. Her first instinct was to run to the public phone located a few yards from the overpass. Her mother always said that in an emergency, she should dial 911. With trembling hands, she punched in the numbers. 911 emergency. "Good evening," a woman's voice answered. "Please, I need help." Emily's voice was steady despite her age. "There's a man trapped in a car that fell down the embankment. He's hurt, and there's smoke coming from the car." "Calm down, sweetheart. Can you tell me where you are?" Emily described the location with surprising accuracy, mentioning the highway overpass, the nearby gas station, and even a bright billboard serving as a reference point. "I'm sending an ambulance right now. Are you alone? Any adults around?" But Emily had already hung up. Her instincts told her there was no time to lose. Returning to the car, she noticed flames beginning to form under the hood. The smell of gasoline was stronger. With a strength she didn't know she had, Emily managed to open the driver's door, which had been partially jammed by the impact. Mister, you need to wake up." She shook Jack's arm gently, but he remained motionless. The flames were now visible, licking at the edges of the crumpled hood. Emily knew she had to act fast. With nimble fingers, she managed to release his seatbelt. Jack was much heavier than she was, but fear of the flames gave her extra strength. "Please, mister, help me just a little," she pleaded, pulling Jack with all her might. As if answering her prayers, Jack groaned softly and instinctively moved his legs. That slight movement was enough for Emily to drag him out of the car. She pulled him away from the vehicle, her small hands gripping the soaked fabric of his suit jacket. It wasn't a moment too soon. Seconds after they'd gotten clear, the fuel tank exploded. turning the Porsche into a ball of fire that lit up the night like an artificial sun. Sirens began to wail in the distance. Emily glanced at Jack one last time, making sure he was breathing. Her eyes caught the gleam of something on the ground, his wallet, which had fallen out during the rescue. For a moment, she hesitated, but then picked it up and stuffed it into the pocket of her worn jacket. She wasn't stealing it. She had a reason that even she didn't fully understand at that moment. The ambulance lights were already visible at the top of the embankment when Emily vanished into the shadows, as quietly as she had appeared. Her small feet knew every shortcut, every hiding spot. Within minutes, she was back under the overpass, where her mother still slept, unaware that her little girl had just become a hero. Jack Thompson, the powerful CEO of one of the largest companies in the country, owed his life to a homeless girl whose existence he'd never even imagined. As the paramedics carried him to the ambulance, he mumbled disjointed words about an angel, a tiny angel with a child's voice, who had pulled him from the jaws of death. In the safety of her makeshift shelter, Emily clutched Jack's wallet, her fingers tracing the soft leather. Inside, along with documents and credit cards, there was a photo. A smiling man beside someone who looked very much like him. Emily didn't know it, but she was looking at Jack and Michael Thompson, and that photo would be the first piece of a puzzle much bigger than she could possibly imagine. Night returned to its usual silence, but something had changed forever. Jack Thompson's and Emily's lives were now intertwined in a way neither of them could predict. This was only the beginning of a story that would transform both in unimaginable ways. While the last embers of the Porsche crackled at the bottom of the ravine, Emily fell asleep next to her mother, still clutching the wallet to her chest. In her sleep, she dreamed of angels driving fast cars and of a future different from the one fate seemed to have in store for her. A future that, unbeknownst to her, had begun to take shape that rainy night when her small act of courage changed not just one life, but many others yet to come. The constant beep of heart monitors was the only music echoing through the ICU at Cedars-Sinai Hospital. Jack Thompson, who just hours earlier controlled a multi-billion-dollar corporate empire, was now fighting for his life in a hospital bed. Tubes and wires snaked around his motionless body as a team of doctors worked tirelessly to stabilize his vital signs. Cranial trauma, 3 broken ribs, ruptured spleen. Dr. Philip Santos listed the injuries for his team during the morning rounds. Considering the state of the vehicle, it's a miracle he's alive. Head nurse Marina, who had been following the case since admission, shook her head in agreement. "Doctor, have you listened to the 911 call recording yet?" The doctor shook his head no, and Marina continued, her voice loaded with emotion. "It was a child who called, a little girl. The operator said she'd never heard such a precise location description of an accident, especially from someone so young." The recording soon became a topic of conversation among the hospital staff. The crystal-clear voice of the anonymous little heroine, mingled with the sound of rain in the background, had something almost surreal. How could such a young child demonstrate so much presence of mind in such a critical situation? "And there's more," Marina added, consulting the rescue notes. When the ambulance arrived, they found Mr. Thompson a safe distance from the vehicle, which exploded minutes later. Someone dragged him out of the car. Someone small, judging by the marks on the ground and on his clothes. Dr. Santos moved closer to Jack's bed, watching the monitors with professional attention. This little girl didn't just save a life. She taught us a lesson in humanity. The first 48 hours were critical. Michael Thompson, Jack's brother, remained at the hospital, his face a mask of worry that occasionally shifted into something darker when he thought no one was looking. He answered the doctor's questions mechanically, but avoided elaborating on the argument that had preceded the accident. On the morning of the 3rd day, Jack began to show the first signs of consciousness. They started with small movements, fingers twitching slightly, eyelids fluttering. Then, like a diver surfacing, he rose from the darkness. The girl," were his first words, weak and halting. "Easy, Mr. Thompson." Marina adjusted his IV. "You're in the hospital. You need to rest." But Jack was uneasy. Fragments of the accident resurfaced in his mind like blurry puzzle pieces, the curve, the rain, the phone, And then, amid the chaos and pain, a child's voice, "Please, mister, help me just a little." "Where? Where is she?" His voice was little more than a whisper. "Nobody knows," Marina replied gently. She disappeared before rescue arrived. In the days that followed, as his body slowly healed, Jack's mind fixated on one goal: finding his rescuer. He replayed the few moments of consciousness he had during the rescue, trying to recall any detail about the girl. But the memories were like water slipping through his fingers. "My wallet," he murmured one day, realizing for the first time that it was gone. "She took my wallet." Michael, who was in the room at that moment, stepped forward. "The police are investigating the theft, Jack. Probably an opportunist after the accident." But Jack shook his head weakly. "No, it was her. The girl. She must have a reason." Recovery was a painful and frustrating process for someone used to controlling everything in his life. Each small movement felt like a battle. Every deep breath was a challenge. But something was changing inside Jack Thompson. Something deeper than his physical wounds. Lying in his hospital bed, he began reflecting on his life in a way he never had before. His brother's words before the accident, the decisions he had made over the years, the empire he had built. All of it seemed different now, seen through the lens of this new perspective that a brush with death had given him. "Marina," he called the nurse one night when pain kept him awake. "What did her voice sound like on the recording?" Marina smiled, sitting down beside the bed. It was against protocol, but something about Jack Thompson, once a powerful businessman now reduced to a broken man in search of answers, touched her heart. "She was very brave," Marina began. Her voice was steady. Even though she was so young, she knew exactly what to say, like she was born for that moment. Jack closed his eyes, absorbing each word. In his mind, an image of the girl began to form, not her face or physical traits, but something more essential: her spirit, her inner strength. "You know what impressed me the most?" Marina went on. "How she disappeared afterward. She didn't stay for thanks or rewards. She did what she had to do and vanished into the night like a real guardian angel." The nurse's words stirred something in Jack. An idea began to form in his mind, still hazy, but growing stronger by the day. He had resources, connections, power. If this girl really was homeless, as they suspected, he could use all of that for something bigger than profits and corporate takeovers. As his physical strength returned, so did his determination. Jack began jotting notes in a small notebook that Michael had brought him. Plans, ideas, possible paths to find the girl. But it wasn't just about finding her. It was about doing something meaningful. Something that could impact not just her life, but the lives of other children in similar situations. "Mr. Thompson," Dr. Santos entered the room 2 weeks after the accident. "Your tests show significant improvement. If you continue like this, we'll be able to move you to a regular room in a few days." Jack nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. In his notebook, a list was growing. Hire private investigators, check security cameras around the area, establish a foundation for homeless children, review the company's social responsibility policies. Michael observed his brother's notes with an unreadable expression. "You need to focus on your recovery, Jack. Let me handle the company." But Jack barely listened. For the first time in his life, the company was not his main concern. The girl who saved him had planted a seed in his heart, a seed of transformation that was beginning to bloom amid the pain and forced introspection of hospital confinement. That night, while the city slept outside, Jack Thompson made a silent vow. He would find his rescuer, not just to thank her, but to repay the gift of life she had given him. And in the process, maybe he could become the kind of person who deserved to be saved by an angel. What he didn't know was that his rescuer was closer than he imagined, sleeping under a nearby overpass, still clutching his wallet, as though it were an invisible link between two worlds that destiny had decided to intertwine in an extraordinary way. During her last round that night, Marina watched her patient finally drift off to sleep, the notebook still in his lap. In her years of nursing, she had witnessed many recoveries, but there was something different about this one. It wasn't just a body healing, it was a soul transforming. Outside, rain began falling over Los Angeles again, washing the streets and creating a silver curtain between the hospital and the rest of the world. Somewhere in that city of contrasts, a little heroine was also dreaming, unaware that her courageous act had sparked a transformation that would affect many more lives than just the one she'd saved that fateful night. Rachel watched the sky grow dark through the cracks in the highway overpass as she carefully folded the only blanket they owned. Her fingers, calloused from years of hardship, ran automatically over the patches she'd sewn herself. Each stitch was a story, each seam a memory of her daily struggle for survival. "Mom, look what I found." Emily came running, her little bare feet barely making a sound on the cold concrete. In her hands was a battered book she had fished out of some trash bin. The smile on her face was like a ray of sunlight cutting through the gloom under the overpass. Rachel felt her heart clench. Even in the harshest circumstances, her daughter found reasons to smile. "What treasure did you bring today, my love?" It was a book of fairy tales, its pages yellowed with age but still holding colorful illustrations of princesses and castles. Rachel took it gently, as if it were made of crystal. She used to be a teacher in another life before the world collapsed on her. As Emily snuggled into her lap, Rachel let her mind wander to the past. 5 years ago, she had everything. A steady job teaching literature at a private school, a small rented apartment, and dreams that felt within reach. Then came an unexpected pregnancy. Emily's father, a fellow teacher who had promised eternal love, disappeared the moment he heard the news. "The school can't keep a single pregnant teacher," the principal had said, masking the dismissal under a veneer of moral concern. "Think of the example for the students." Rachel swallowed hard, stroking Emily's hair at the memory. A health problem during the pregnancy drained her savings. She fell behind on rent. One by one, friends drifted away. It was remarkable how poverty had the power to make people vanish from your life. "Mom, read to me," Emily asked, her eyes shining with that innocence Rachel fought daily to preserve. "Once upon a time," she began, her soft voice echoing under the overpass. Other homeless children gathered around, drawn by the story. Rachel smiled, momentarily feeling as though she was back in a classroom, but reality was never far away. Emily's stomach growled, reminding Rachel they hadn't eaten since breakfast, a single piece of bread they had shared, obtained from a bakery where she sometimes washed dishes in exchange for food. "Time to work, my love." Rachel closed the book gently. "You know what to do." Emily nodded solemnly. At 6, she already knew the routine. While Rachel headed to her usual spot at the traffic light to sell candy and windshield wipes, Emily would stay safe under the overpass, guarding their few belongings. At the traffic light, Rachel practiced what she called her silent dignity. She didn't beg or plead. She simply offered her goods with a polite smile, thanking people even when ignored. Her upright posture and articulate speech often surprised drivers. Some even asked how someone like her ended up here. "Life sometimes takes us down unexpected roads," was her standard reply, avoiding deeper explanations that would only elicit pity or judgment. Between cars, Rachel planned. Every coin was counted twice. Every possible job was investigated. She had sent resumes to dozens of schools, but the address under the overpass and the gap in her work history closed doors before she could even try to open them. Still, she persisted. Every morning, she used the restroom at a nearby gas station to keep herself looking presentable. Her improvised uniform, a white t-shirt and jeans, always clean, was her armor against prejudice. Her hair, despite the lack of proper products, was kept neat in a simple bun. "Poverty doesn't have to take our dignity," she always told Emily. Back under the overpass at the end of another exhausting day, Rachel found her daughter organizing her treasures. Besides the newly found book, there was a small collection of objects salvaged from the streets. A broken comb, some plastic flowers, a half-used notebook, and now something new, a fine leather wallet. "Emily, where did you get this?" Rachel asked, her heart racing at the obviously valuable item. The girl hesitated for a moment, unusual for her normally transparent behavior. "It was from the man's car, Mom, the one I helped on that rainy night." Rachel sat down, pulling Emily close. Her daughter then recounted the accident, the rescue, the call to 911. With each word, pride and fear mingled in Rachel's chest. Pride for her daughter's courage and compassion, fear of what might happen next. "You did something very noble, my love," Rachel said, hugging Emily tightly, "but we need to return this wallet." "But Mum, what if he can help us?" Emily's voice carried a hope that broke Rachel's heart. "He seemed rich, with that fancy car." Rachel shook her head gently. "Our help will come from our own efforts, Emily. Honesty is the only wealth no one can take from us." That night, while Emily slept, Rachel examined the wallet by the faint glow of a distant streetlight. The name on the ID card made her gasp. Jack Thompson, CEO of Thompson Industries. She knew the name. Who didn't? He was one of the richest and most powerful men in the country. A business card fell from the wallet, and Rachel picked it up carefully. On it, besides the company's address, there was a personal phone number. Her fingers trembled slightly as she put the card back. Lying down next to Emily, Rachel pulled their patched blanket over them. The sound of cars passing on the highway above was their usual lullaby. In her mind, plans and possibilities formed and dissolved like clouds in the sky. Tomorrow would be another day of struggle, another day of forced smiles at the traffic light, searching for work, keeping hope alive. But tonight, for the first time in a long while, Rachel allowed herself to dream of something different. Not a magic rescue or miraculous solution, but the possibility of a small change. A small chance to show Emily that honesty and courage really could make a difference. Before falling asleep, Rachel whispered a prayer, not for herself, but for the man her daughter had saved. Wherever he was, she hoped he was okay. After all, in a world so full of indifference, the fact that her little Emily chose to help a stranger was proof she was doing something right as a mother. The night wind blew under the overpass, carrying the smell of rain. Rachel held Emily in her arms, feeling her daughter's soft breathing. Somewhere in the city, in a hospital room, Jack Thompson also dreamed of angels and rescues, two worlds so far apart, yet connected by one child's courageous act and a fine leather wallet. The night stretched on, covering the city with its dark mantle, equalizing mansions and overpasses under the same starry sky. And beneath that sky, mother and daughter slept, their dreams entangled with unspoken hopes and unrealized possibilities. The wallet, carefully kept among their few belongings, was more than an object. It was a symbol of a choice that would change their lives forever. Jack Thompson stood at the window of his penthouse office in the Thompson building, staring out over the city. 3 weeks after his recovery, he had returned to work, but his thoughts were far from the spreadsheets and reports piling up on his desk. "Mr. Thompson, your meeting with the social worker is scheduled for 2 p.m. Sandra, his secretary, announced for the third time that morning. She had noticed the change in her boss since the accident. The man once obsessed with business now seemed to be pursuing a far more personal goal. "Thank you, Sandra. And those 911 call records I requested? They just arrived by email," she answered, as efficient as ever. "I also got in touch with that nurse from Cedars Sinai, Marina. She's willing to help with anything you need." Jack nodded, his eyes scanning the city below. Somewhere in that labyrinth of buildings and overpasses was the little girl who had saved his life. The same city he once viewed merely as a battleground for his corporate victories now held a treasure he was determined to find. At exactly 2 p.m., Dr. Clara Mendes, a veteran social worker, entered his office. Her experienced gaze sized Jack up with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. "Mr. Thompson, I understand your gratitude, but let me be clear. Finding a homeless child in Los Angeles is like looking for a needle in a haystack." Jack leaned forward in his chair. "Doctor, I have unlimited resources and even greater determination. Tell me what we need and I'll make it happen." Clara adjusted her glasses, studying the notes on her tablet. "Based on the description, we're looking for a girl around 6 years old, probably living with her mother. The 911 call was made from a public phone near the accident site." "That's a start. I've mobilized a team to map out all homeless populations in the area," Jack explained, opening a digital map on his screen. Red dots marked concentration points. "I also hired private investigators to analyze security footage from the night of the accident." Clara looked at the map with professional interest. Impressive. But, Mr. Thompson, I need to ask, what's your real objective here? The question caught Jack by surprise. He stood up, walking to the window again. When you come close to dying, Doctor, and someone saves you without asking for anything in return, it changes something inside you. He unconsciously touched the scar on his forehead, a permanent reminder of that night. It's not just about finding her. It's about understanding why a child who has nothing risked her life to save someone who has everything. Clara smiled, a gentle smile that softened her features. Maybe that's the lesson she had to teach you. The afternoon passed in a succession of phone calls and meetings. Jack listened to the 911 recording dozens of times, trying to detect any background detail that could serve as a clue. Marina, the nurse, came by in person to deliver her notes from the night of the accident. There was something special about her, Marina recalled, thinking about the call. A maturity beyond her years, like she was used to handling tough situations. Jack absorbed every piece of information, building in his mind a profile of his rescuer. The security cameras had captured only indistinct shadows on that rainy night, but every new detail was another piece of the puzzle. Sandra, he called his secretary, contact every school within a 3-mile radius of the accident site. I want to know about any student named Emily who stopped attending classes in the last few years. Michael showed up at the end of the day, his expression a mask of brotherly concern. Jack, the board is worried. You've barely shown up at the important meetings. Important is relative, Michael, Jack replied, not looking away from the investigators' reports. While you handle the company, I have something more urgent to deal with. A homeless child? Michael let out a sound of disbelief. Jack, be realistic. Even if you find her, what are you going to do? Adopt her? Jack finally looked at his brother. Why not? You always told me I needed to focus less on profits and more on people. A muscle twitched in Michael's face, so quickly Jack almost missed it. I'm just trying to protect you, brother. Sometimes people do things out of self-interest. This whole story seems a bit too convenient. Convenient? Jack stood, confronting his brother. She saved my life and disappeared without asking for anything. What kind of interest could that be? Michael raised his hands in a gesture of surrender. I'm just trying to look out for you, Jack. After Michael left, Jack stayed in his office late into the night. The city lights outside formed a bright mosaic, each point a life, a story. Somewhere in that sea of lights, a little anonymous heroine might be looking at the same sky. His phone buzzed. It was another report from the investigation team. A witness reported seeing a woman and a young girl frequently near the accident site. The woman often sold candy at a traffic light. Jack's heart raced. This was the first concrete lead. On his desk was a stack of documents awaiting his signature. Proposals for reorganizing the company, including the creation of a new foundation aimed at children in vulnerable situations. It was no longer just about finding Emily. It was about turning his gratitude into something bigger, something that could affect other lives as well. The phone rang again. It was Clara Mendez. Mr. Thompson, I just received some interesting information. One of the schools mentioned they had a teacher named Rachel who disappeared a few years ago while pregnant. The timing matches the approximate age of the girl we're looking for. Jack felt a surge of hope. Send me everything you have on that immediately. As he waited for the files, he reflected on his transformation over the past few weeks. The man who once thought only of acquisitions and mergers was now fully absorbed in the search for a child. Ironically, that search was teaching him more about humanity than all his years in the corporate world had. Sandra entered with a final cup of coffee. Sir, don't you think you should go home to rest? Jack smiled, taking the cup. Not yet, Sandra. I have a feeling we're close. Very close. What he didn't know was that at that exact moment, just a few miles away, Rachel held his wallet in her hands, making a decision that would alter the course of all their lives forever. On Jack's desk lay a photo of the accident scene, showing small footprints in the mud where Emily's feet had left their mark, like steps toward destiny, pointing to a meeting that was about to happen, a meeting that would transform not just two lives, but an entire circle of existences connected by a child's act of courage on a stormy night. The doorbell of the Thompson mansion rang through the living room precisely at 7:15 in the morning. Jackie, who had barely slept while reviewing the latest reports about Emily, watched through the security camera as three figures in dark suits stood at his door. Their LAPD badges gleamed in the early sunlight. "Mr. Thompson?" The man leading the group spoke as soon as Jack opened the door. "I'm Detective Roberts, Los Angeles Police Department Homicide Division. These are Detectives Silva and Mendonça. We need to talk about your accident." Jack felt a chill down his spine. Homicide? Certainly, come in. But why is Homicide interested in a car accident? Roberts, a middle-aged man with sharp eyes that seemed to catalogue every detail of the environment, smiled without humor. "Because it might not have been just an accident, Mr. Thompson." In the living room, the three investigators positioned themselves strategically. Roberts took the main armchair while Silva, a woman with Asian features and an analytical expression, remained standing, observing the family photos on the wall. Mendonça, the youngest of the three, readied a digital recorder. "For the record," Roberts began, "this is a preliminary interview about the incident on the night of January 15, 2025, involving the Porsche 911 GT3 owned by Jack Thompson. Mr. Thompson, please tell us about the events leading up to the accident." Jack took a deep breath, organizing his thoughts. "I had just left a tense meeting with my brother Michael, right here at home. It was raining and I—" "What was the reason for the tension?" Silva interrupted, her gaze still locked on the photographs. "Disagreements over the company's direction. Michael thought I was being—" The doorbell rang again. As if summoned by the mention of his name, Michael Thompson walked into the room, his impeccable suit contrasting with his anxious expression. "Jack, Sandra called me about the police." He turned to the detectives. "Michael Thompson, brother and executive vice president of Thompson Industries. Why wasn't I notified about this visit?" Roberts observed the dynamic between the brothers with professional interest. "Mr. Michael Thompson, your presence is convenient. We were just discussing the argument that preceded the accident." Michael sat down next to his brother, taking on a protective posture. "As an attorney, I advise my brother not to continue without legal representation." "No need for that, Michael," Jack intervened. "I have nothing to hide." Roberts gestured to Mendonça, who pulled a folder from his briefcase. "Mr. Thompson, Jack, we had our tech department analyze your vehicle. We found something interesting. The photos Mendonça laid on the coffee table told a disturbing story. Close-ups of the brake system showed clear signs of tampering, a tiny puncture in the brake fluid reservoir, almost imperceptible, but fatal at high speed. This, Roberts pointed to one of the images, was not caused by the impact. It was done beforehand with surgical precision. Jack felt his blood run cold. Michael leaned in to examine the photos, his face a mask of shock and indignation. "Are you suggesting someone tried to kill my brother?" Silva finally stepped away from the family photographs on the wall. "Mr. Thompson, do you have any idea who might want you dead?" Jack let out a humorless laugh. "I'm the CEO of one of the biggest companies in the country. The list of people who don't like me is considerable." "Be more specific," Roberts pressed. "We have a particular interest in your recent negotiations with the Castellari Group." The mention of that name made Michael tense almost imperceptibly. Jack, however, was fully absorbed by the implications of sabotage. The negotiations to acquire Castellari technology, yeah, they were tense. Antonio Castellari was not happy when we uncovered some irregularities in his accounts. "Irregularities?" Roberts arched an eyebrow. "Systematic accounting fraud," Michael explained in a professional tone. "Our legal department was preparing a report for the SEC." Silva typed rapidly on her tablet. "What about Aurora Enterprises?" "We have information about a recent dispute over patents." The next 2 hours were a deep dive into the corporate underworld. Every contested negotiation, every hostile takeover, every lawsuit was a potential murder motive. Roberts listened intently, occasionally exchanging meaningful looks with his colleagues. "We'll need access to all documents related to these transactions," Roberts finally announced. "Our legal department will provide everything," Michael offered quickly. "But I suppose you're also interested in my brother's mysterious rescuer." Michael's casual comment caused a subtle shift in the room's atmosphere. Roberts leaned forward slightly. "Ah, yes. The miracle girl," as the press has dubbed her. Curious that she never showed up for any thanks, isn't it? Are you implying something, Detective? Jack felt a protective surge toward his unknown savior. Just observing that, in our experience, coincidences rarely are just coincidences. A homeless kid shows up exactly at the right time, saves your life and vanishes without a trace. With all due respect, Jack rose to his feet, voice taut with reined-in emotion. That girl risked her life to save me. She is not part of any conspiracy. Mendonça, who had been quiet for a while, cleared his throat. Mr. Thompson, you mentioned your wallet went missing that night. Don't even think about it, Jack cut him off. If she took my wallet, I'm sure she has her reasons. And when I find her, I intend to thank her personally. Roberts watched Jack curiously. So you're actively looking for her? Yes, and before you ask, I've hired private investigators. Not to arrest her or press charges, but to help her. Silva and Mendonça exchanged glances. Roberts closed his notebook with a decisive snap. Mr. Thompson, we need you to remain available for further questioning. And he hesitated for a moment. If you find the girl, we'd like to talk to her as well. As a key witness, of course. After the police left, Michael stayed in the living room, watching his brother with concern. Jack, this is more serious than we thought. If someone really tried to kill you, I know, Michael, and I plan to find out who... Jack walked over to the window, watching the detective's car pulling away. But first, I need to find Emily. Don't you see how the two things might be connected? Michael argued. What if she's not just an innocent kid? What if someone's using her? Jack turned to face his brother. You weren't there, Michael. You didn't see what I saw. You didn't feel what I felt. That girl, there's something special about her. Something genuine. Michael sighed, giving in. All right, you're my brother. I'll help you with whatever you need. The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Technical teams arrived to sweep the mansion and Jack's other vehicles. Michael coordinated communication with the legal department, providing investigators with thousands of pages of corporate documents. In the afternoon, Roberts returned with more experts. The wrecked Porsche had been taken to a specialized lab where every inch would be analyzed for evidence. We found some interesting residue in the brake system, the lead forensic expert explained, showing samples under a microscope. The cut was made with a specific industrial tool. We're tracing all recent purchases of this kind of equipment. Jack watched everything with a growing sense of unreality. In just a few weeks, his life had turned into a corporate thriller, attempted murder, police investigations, and a mysterious savior. Mr. Thompson, Roberts called him aside during a break in the analyses. I need you to understand the gravity of the situation. Someone with access, technical know-how, and motive tried to kill you, and that person is probably still close by. You're suggesting it was someone inside the company. Roberts only gave him a significant look before walking away. That night, after everyone had left, Jack remained in his office, Roberts's words echoing in his mind. On the wall, a map of the accident area was covered with dozens of notes. His personal search for Emily. His phone vibrated. It was Sandra, his secretary. Sir, that social worker, Clara Mendez, called. She says she has news about this teacher, Rachel. Jack felt his heart pound. Even amid all the attempts on his life and investigations, finding Emily remained his top priority. Thank you, Sandra. Schedule a meeting with her first thing tomorrow. He stood, moving toward the window. Outside, the city sparkled under the night sky, holding its secrets. Somewhere out there was a brave little girl who'd saved his life. Somewhere out there was also someone who had tried to take it. Michael was right about one thing. The two stories might be connected, but not in the way his brother imagined. Jack had a growing suspicion that finding Emily wouldn't just be about gratitude or redemption. It might be the key to uncovering the entire mystery. His phone vibrated again. It was a text from an unknown number. Not all angels have wings. Some have a child's eyes and a pure heart. Take care, Mr. Thompson. There's more at stake than you think. Jack reread the message several times, a chill running through him. When he tried calling back, he discovered the number didn't exist. On his desk, photos of the destroyed car seemed to mock him. Among them, a small detail caught his eye, a child's handprint on the fender, preserved in the dried mud. The same hand that saved him had left its mark, like a signature of fate. Roberts was right, coincidences rarely are just coincidences, but sometimes, Jack thought, the universe conspires in mysterious ways, intertwining lives and destinies in a complex web of redemption and revelation. Night wore on, and with it, the certainty that every step closer to Emily would also bring him closer to the truth about who had tried to kill him. The question was, would he be ready for what he would find at the end of this journey? In his pocket, the mysterious text glowed on his phone screen like a warning of what was to come. His search for the little savior had turned into something much bigger, a race against time, where every discovery could be both a blessing and a curse. The top-floor conference room at the Thompson building had been turned into an improvised investigation center. Glass panels covered the walls, filled with photos, documents, and diagrams connected by colorful lines. At the center of the oval table, Jack Thompson studied reports as Detective Roberts presented his latest findings. "Antonio Castellari is no longer in the country," Roberts said, pointing to a photo of the Italian businessman. "He left the United States 2 days before your accident. One-way ticket to Milan." Michael, who was closely following everything, frowned. "Running away or building an alibi?" "Maybe both," Roberts replied, spreading more documents across the table. "But the interesting part isn't where Castellari went, but who he met with before leaving." Surveillance photos showed Castellari at a discreet restaurant in Beverly Hills, accompanied by a familiar figure, Ricardo Aurora, CEO of Aurora Enterprises. "Our two main rivals having dinner together." Jack leaned over the images. "That doesn't make sense. Aurora and Castellari have always hated each other." "Unless," Michael interjected, "they've found a common enemy." Roberts nodded, picking up another file. "In the last 48 hours, we've identified a series of suspicious transactions. Castellari Technology transferred a large sum of money to a shell company in the Cayman Islands. 3 days later, a similar amount was moved from an account linked to Aurora Enterprises. Payment for services rendered, Jack suggested, a bitter taste in his mouth. "Possibly, but there's more." Roberts signaled and Detective Silver entered the room, carrying a laptop. "We discovered both companies hired the same security consultant in recent months, someone who specializes in accidents." The laptop displayed images of a middle-aged man with a discreet appearance. Viktor Kovac, ex-military from Croatia, an expert in mechanical sabotage. Jack felt a chill, recognizing the pattern. "The cut in the brake system matches Kovac's signature exactly," Silver confirmed. "He's on Interpol's wanted list for similar incidents in Europe." Michael began pacing around the room, his legal mind processing the implications. "So Castellari and Aurora joined forces to eliminate Jack. Why?" "Thompson Industries was never such a big threat to them." "It's not about the present," Jack muttered, a sudden realization hitting him. "It's about the future, the Phoenix Project." Roberts raised an interrogative eyebrow. 6 months ago, Jack explained, our R&D team developed a revolutionary quantum processing technology, something that would render Castellari's and Aurora's products obsolete overnight. "The leak about the project started 2 weeks ago," Michael added. "Our stock soared while theirs plummeted." Silver jotted notes on her tablet. "That would explain the urgency. But there are still loose ends. The money traced. It's much more than needed for a single operation like this." "Unless," Roberts suggested, "the accident was just part of a larger plan." Tension in the room rose tangibly. Jack stood, moving closer to the glass panels. "What kind of larger plan?" "We've received information about a possible hostile takeover," Roberts revealed. "With you out of the picture, Thompson's stock would crash. Perfect timing for a takeover bid." Michael slammed the table in frustration. "We need solid proof, something we can take to the board and the FBI. "We're getting there," Roberts assured him. "Kovac was spotted in Los Angeles last week. We have teams tracking all known contacts of his." Jack was barely listening. His eyes were locked on a particular photo on the panel, the site of the accident. Amid all this corporate conspiracy, something else nagged at him. How did Emily fit into all this? "Detective," he interrupted the discussion. "Did you recheck the security cameras at the gas station near the accident site?" Silver looked at her notes. Yes, but as we reported before, the footage on that rainy night, not the night of the accident, Jack cut her off. Weeks before. Kovac would have needed to study my route, my habits. A flash of understanding crossed Roberts' face. And if he wasn't working alone? If he had a surveillance team? Exactly, Jack said, excited. Emily knew that area. She might have seen something or someone without realizing its importance. Michael scowled. Jack, don't force connections. Not everything ties back to your obsession with this girl. It's not an obsession, Michael. It's instinct. Jack turned to Roberts. I need to find her. Not just out of gratitude now, but because she might be a crucial witness. Roberts considered for a moment. I'll assign an additional team to assist in the search. But Mr. Thompson, you must understand, if she really saw something, she could be in danger. The realization hit Jack like a punch in the gut. If Kovac or his associates suspected a little street girl could identify them, we have to find her first, he declared, his voice urgent. The rest of the afternoon was a flurry of activity. While Roberts' team followed corporate leads, Jack doubled down on his search for Emily. Each passing minute could mean danger for his small savior. Michael stayed by his side, coordinating legal and investigative teams, but Jack noticed something about his brother, a simmering tension, as if each new discovery made him more nervous. By nightfall, when most had gone home, Jack found an envelope on his desk. Inside was a single photo, Emily, captured by a security camera, walking with her mother near the overpass. The image was recent. His heart raced. Finally, a solid lead. But with hope came fear. If he had obtained this picture, others could too. The race against time had just become more urgent. Somewhere in the city, a little heroine and her mother were living their lives, unaware they were at the center of a far bigger web of conspiracies than they could imagine. Jack stared out the window at the city stretching beneath the night sky. Hang in there, he murmured. I'm coming. The morning was exceptionally clear when Jack parked his car near the overpass. The photo in his hand showed precisely this location, where Rachel and Emily had been spotted regularly. His heart pounded as he surveyed the area, accompanied by Michael and two investigators discreetly positioned nearby. Are you sure you want to do this personally? Michael asked, adjusting his tie nervously. We could send a team. No, Jack interrupted firmly. They need to see my intentions are genuine. No team, no official entourage. The traffic light changed, and that's when Jack spotted her, Rachel, exactly as in the photo, selling candy to drivers. Despite her simple clothes, she held herself with a quiet dignity that immediately impressed him. That's her, he murmured to himself more than anyone else. With measured steps, Jack crossed the street. Rachel noticed him coming, and something in her eyes shifted. Recognition, apprehension, resolve. Ms. Rachel? Jack called softly, stopping at a respectful distance. She did not show surprise upon hearing her name. Mr. Thompson, she replied in a firm voice. I was wondering when you'd come. The world seemed to pause for a moment. In the silence that followed, they regarded each other, the powerful businessman and the former teacher whose lives had diverged so drastically. My daughter saved your life, Rachel continued, her voice low but clear. So what are you here for now? Justice? Gratitude? Or something else? I'm here, Jack replied earnestly, because I need to thank the angel who gave me a second chance, and because you both might be in danger. The mention of danger made Rachel tense. Emily, she called, turning toward the overpass. A small figure emerged from the shadows, and Jack's heart stopped for a moment. Emily, his savior, stood there, tiny, brave, her eyes shining with a wisdom beyond her years. I know you, Emily said simply, coming closer. You're the man from the car. Jack knelt to her eye level, unshed tears glistening. And you're my guardian angel. Emily smiled, a smile that lit up her entire face. I'm not an angel, mister. I just did what was right. Michael, watching from a distance, slowly approached. Rachel instinctively pulled Emily closer. It's okay, Jack reassured her. This is my brother, Michael. He's here to help too. Your wallet, Emily suddenly said, reaching into the pocket of her worn jacket. I kept it. I knew I'd be able to return it someday. Jack took the wallet with quiet emotion, noticing how carefully she'd preserved it despite everything. "You're a very special girl, Emily." "Mr. Thompson," Rachel interjected, "I appreciate your gratitude, but I need to know what you meant by danger." Jack exchanged a look with Michael before continuing. "My accident wasn't an accident. Someone tried to kill me. And there's a chance Emily saw something, even if she didn't realize it." Rachel went pale, wrapping her arms protectively around her daughter. "So those men—" "What men?" Michael asked quickly. His interest piqued. "The week before the accident," Emily answered in her childlike voice laced with memories, "there were some strange men around here. One of them had an accent." Jack and Michael shared a significant glance. "Kovac, we need to get you out of here," Jack declared. "I have a safe house ready, with all the protection you'll need." Rachel hesitated, years of distrust battling against the urgency of the situation. "Why should we trust you?" "Because your daughter trusted me that night," Jack answered softly. "She didn't have to save me, but she did the right thing. Now it's my turn to do the same." Emily tugged at her mother's sleeve. "He's a good person, Mum. You can see it in his eyes." Michael cleared his throat, checking his watch. "We need to move. We've been exposed for too long." Rachel looked over their few belongings under the overpass. Books, clothes, memories of a life turned upside down. "We should get our things." "I'll have someone retrieve them safely," Jack promised. "Right now, it's most important to keep you both safe." The drive to the safe house was silent, heavy with unspoken emotions and thoughts. Emily sat between Jack and Rachel in the back seat of the armored SUV, occasionally casting curious glances at the man she had rescued. "You know," she said at one point, "that night I was scared, but something told me I had to help." Jack felt his heart tighten. "You're braver than most adults I know, Emily." The safe house was actually a mansion in a gated community, guarded discreetly but effectively at every entrance. Rachel looked around with a mix of awe and discomfort. "I know it's a lot to take in," Jack said, leading them inside. "But I promise I'll explain everything. You deserve to know the whole truth." Michael oversaw their placement, ensuring all security protocols were followed. There was something in his efficiency that felt almost anxious. That night, after Emily finally fell asleep in her first real bedroom, Rachel and Jack talked on the veranda under a star-studded sky that seemed the same as ever, though everything had changed. "She talks about you," Rachel revealed. "How the car was on fire, how she couldn't leave you there." "She gave me more than a second chance at life," Jack replied, voice thick with emotion. "She gave me a new perspective, a new purpose." Rachel smiled gently. "Emily has that effect on people. Even in the worst circumstances, she sees the best in everything and everyone. Like she saw in me that night," Jack added. "Rachel, I promise I'll protect you both, and when this is all over, I want to help give Emily every opportunity she deserves." "We don't want charity, Mr. Thompson." "It's not charity," he corrected gently. "It's gratitude. And if you'll allow me, friendship," Michael observed from the doorway, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. "I'll reinforce security," he announced, stepping away quickly. That first night in the safe house marked the start of something new. Between Jack and Emily, there was already a strong bond. She saw him as the man from the car, and he saw her as his guardian angel. Rachel, although cautious, began lowering her defenses as she witnessed Jack's genuine concern for their well-being. None of them realized it was only the beginning. In the days ahead, truths would come to light, dangers would be revealed, and the bond between them would be tested in ways no one could predict. For now, though, there was just that moment, an improvised family, united by fate and by the courage of a small girl who chose to do the right thing on a stormy night. Jack Thompson's office was dimly lit in the early evening when Sandra, his secretary, rushed in with a red folder in her hands. Her usually composed face showed rare agitation. "Mr. Thompson, the internal audit report is here. You need to see it right away." Jack Yount, who had been on the phone with Detective Roberts, ended the call quickly and took the folder. As his eyes swept over the numbers and graphs, his expression shifted from curiosity to disbelief, and then to barely contained anger. "Sandra, get Michael, now." While he waited, Jack spread the documents across his desk, creating a mosaic of evidence that pointed to something more sinister than he'd imagined. Suspicious transactions, offshore accounts, systematic embezzlement, all carefully disguised for years through creative accounting. Michael arrived minutes later, carrying the usual aura of professional efficiency that had become his trademark in recent weeks. "Find something interesting?" he asked casually, straightening his silk tie. Jack slid the papers toward him. "Interesting is an understatement. We have a leak, Michael. Someone inside Thompson Industries has been siphoning off millions for years." Michael examined the papers with meticulous attention, his face a mask of professional concentration. That would explain Aurora's and Castellari's sudden interest. They must have uncovered these irregularities during due diligence and used it as leverage, Jack finished, getting up to look out the window. Outside, the city was lighting up like stars in a concrete sky. But something still doesn't fit. The phone rang. It was Roberts. "Mr. Thompson, we've got updates on Kovac. He was seen boarding a flight to Dubai last night. But before that, he made a rather interesting transfer." A significant pause. "To an account linked to Thompson Industries." Jack felt a chill. "Which account?" "We're still tracing it, but there's more. It appears the attempt on your life was just part of a bigger plan. Someone was setting the stage for a major leadership shift in the company." Michael Town, who was listening via speakerphone, interjected, "A corporate coup." "Exactly," Roberts confirmed. "And from what we're uncovering, it was orchestrated by someone with deep inside knowledge of the company's operations." After hanging up, Jack called an emergency meeting with his trusted team. Within an hour, the conference room was filled with auditors, lawyers, and private investigators. Clara Mendez, the social worker who had helped in the search for Emily's, was there too. Her presence might have seemed out of place among so many executives, but Jack insisted she offered a different perspective that had proven invaluable. "The embezzlement began exactly 5 years ago," the chief auditor explained, projecting graphs on a screen. "Small at first, almost undetectable, but gradually growing. Like ants carrying an elephant," Clara commented, "bit by bit." The analogy struck Jack. "When did Aurora first show interest in our quantum technology?" One of the analysts checked his records. "Official approach was 6 months ago, but Jack pressed. "We have evidence they knew about the project much earlier. Someone was leaking information." Michael, taking methodical notes, looked up. "The same person behind the embezzlement." "Likely," the auditor confirmed. "The pattern of transactions suggests someone with top-level access." Jack felt the eyes in the room turn to him. As CEO, it was his responsibility to have noticed something. The weight of failure pressed on him. "Mr. Thompson," Clara gently broke into his thoughts, "do you remember when you told me that sometimes we need a child's eyes to see the truth?" He nodded, recalling their conversation about Emily. "Then let's do that now," she continued. "Forget the corporate complexities for a moment. Who stood to benefit from your death?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Michael cleared his throat uneasily. "List of major shareholders," Jack ordered. The screen shifted to show a list of names and percentages. Michael Thompson was second, just after Jack. "Interesting," Clara murmured, studying the figures. "Mr. Thompson, who takes control of the company if something happens to you?" "Michael, of course," Jack answered automatically. "He's my designated successor," and his voice trailed off as a sudden memory hit him. His brother's words on the night of the accident. Michael calling him blind. As if sensing the change in the room, Michael stood. "Maybe we should focus on the external suspects. Aurora and Castellari have clear motives." "Do they?" Clara asked softly. "Or were they just pawns in a bigger game?" Jack's phone vibrated. A text from Roberts. "We traced the account. It's registered to a consulting company. The owner is..." He didn't need to finish reading. The pieces were falling into place with painful clarity. "Michael," Jack said calmly, controlling his voice, "did you meet with Kovac before the accident?" The silence that followed was deafening. At that moment, Emily burst into the room, followed by Rachel, who was trying to stop her. "Uncle Jack!" the girl exclaimed, only to freeze when she felt the tension in the air. Her perceptive eyes scanned the room, landing on Michael. "He's afraid," she said simply. Michael stepped toward the door, but 2 security guards were already blocking his exit. Jack noticed his brother's hands trembling slightly. "Why?" Jack asked, voice thick with restrained pain. "All these years, Michael." "You never understood," Michael suddenly shouted. "You were always the perfect son, the natural heir. I was just the shadow, the eternal second place." Rachel pulled Emily close. The child, however, kept her eyes on Michael, as if she could see right through him. "The embezzlement started small," Michael continued, his composure unraveling. "It was so easy, and you were so wrapped up in your grand visions, you never noticed. The quantum project was the last straw. Yet again, you'd be the visionary, the genius entrepreneur." "So you hired Kovac," Jack said bitterly. "Planned it all. My death, the hostile takeover, the transfer of control. It was perfect," Michael practically screamed. "With you out of the way, the stock would plummet. Aurora and Castellari would make offers, but I'd keep the controlling share. Finally, I'd get my turn." "Your turn to be what?" Emily interrupted, her childlike voice slicing through the tension like a blade. "A bad person." Michael stopped, as though slapped. He looked at the small girl who had unraveled his entire plan by simply doing the right thing. Roberts chose that moment to enter, accompanied by other officers. "Michael Thompson, you are under arrest for the crime of attempted murder." As the police took Michael away, Jack stood still, feeling the weight of years of betrayal. Emily slipped free from Rachel's hold and came to him, taking his hand. "Sometimes," she said with the wisdom only children possess, "the people closest to us can hurt us the most." Jack squeezed her tiny hand silently, tears glistening in his eyes. Clara watched with a sad smile. "You know what's ironic," she remarked quietly to Rachel. "That took a child who had nothing materially to teach a lesson about the true value of things." The following days were a whirlwind of statements, investigations, and even deeper revelations. The media had a field day with the scandal. But that night, as the truth finally came to light, Jack Thompson understood that sometimes you have to lose something to gain something far more valuable. Emily, his little savior, had not only saved his life that rainy night, she had also stopped an even greater tragedy from unfolding. And now, looking at her and Rachel, Jack realized he'd found something Michael, with all his ambition, could never grasp: the true meaning of family. Night fell over Los Angeles, and with it, the last pieces of the puzzle slid into place. But this wasn't a story with a purely happy or sad ending. It was a story of redemption, second chances, and of how sometimes you must lose a brother by blood to gain a family by heart. In Jack's pocket, the wallet Emily had returned now seemed heavier. Inside it, the old photo of the 2 smiling brothers served as a bittersweet reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and that true loyalty can come from the most unexpected places. The investigation would continue, revealing even more layers of conspiracy and betrayal. But that night, while Emily told stories to distract everyone from the tension, Jack Thompson finally understood that his little rescuer had not only saved his life, she had saved his soul. The Los Angeles Federal Detention Center carried a tense atmosphere that morning. On the 12th floor, a specially prepared interrogation room awaited its occupant. Michael Thompson, once the respected executive vice president of Thompson Industries, now wore handcuffs and a gray prison uniform. Detective Roberts methodically arranged a series of folders on the metal table. Each document had been carefully selected to tell a story of betrayal, greed, and a conspiracy, stretching far beyond what anyone had initially imagined. "Let's start from the beginning, Mr. Thompson," Roberts said, his calm voice honed by years of extracting confessions from white-collar criminals. "And this time, we want the whole truth." In the adjacent observation room, behind a one-way mirror, Jack Thompson watched his brother with a mixture of emotions he couldn't fully decipher. Next to him, Clara Mendez offered a silent but comforting presence. "Do you recognize this document?" Robert slid a sheet across the table. Michael examined it, his face a mask of studied indifference. It was a bank transfer dated 10 years ago, the first in a long series of embezzlements now coming to light. "That's when it all began, Dees," Michael finally spoke, bitterness lacing his words enough to surprise even the most seasoned investigators. The day our father announced his decision regarding the company's succession, Roberts waited, letting the silence do its work. I was the oldest, Michael went on, his voice trembling with long-repressed anger. I had the best diplomas, the best training. I spent my whole life preparing to run Thompson Industries, but Jack was always the favorite. In the observation room, Jack felt a pang in his chest. Childhood and youth memories rearranged themselves under this new light. The reserved looks from his brother, the veiled comments, the emotional distance he'd always chalked up to work stress. That first transfer was almost a test, Michael continued, his fingers drumming nervously on the table. I wanted to see if anyone would notice, if Jack's perfect system had any flaws. When nobody did, well, it was like opening a door I couldn't close anymore. Roberts opened another folder, revealing surveillance photos. And these meetings with Aurora executives, when did they start exactly? Michael laughed, a humorless sound. They approached me. They already knew about the embezzlement. Apparently, I wasn't as careful as I thought. Then, instead of turning me in, they offered a partnership. It was ingenious, really. Use my own crime as leverage for something much bigger. The next hours brought increasingly shocking revelations. The conspiracy unraveled into an intricate web of corporate corruption involving some of the country's biggest companies. Aurora and Castellari were just the tip of the iceberg. The quantum project changed everything, Michael explained, slowly collapsing under the weight of his confessions. When Jack announced its development, it was too revolutionary. It would reshape the entire market. Aurora would collapse. Castellari would lose decades of tech development. We couldn't allow it. So Kovac came into play, Roberts filled in. He was perfect, Michael admitted, a feverish gleam in his eyes, not just for his technical expertise, but because he understood the bigger picture. It wasn't only about killing Jack, it was about creating the perfect controlled chaos. The accident, the market panic, the plummeting stocks. I would emerge as the company's savior, the leader everyone needed. In the neighboring room, Jack had to sit down. Clara offered him a glass of water, which he accepted with trembling hands. Mr. Thompson, she said softly, Emily has been asking about you again. The mention of Emily snapped Jack out of his trance. How is she? Worried about you? She has a unique perspective on all of this. In the interrogation room, Roberts revealed his trump card, a flash drive seized from Michael's private office. Your personal records are quite detailed, the detective commented, leafing through printed pages. Every transfer, every meeting, every bribe, meticulously documented. Why? Michael seemed to age a decade at the question. Insurance. At this level of the game, you need protection. If something went wrong, I wouldn't go down alone. Does this include the records about your father? The silence was deafening. In the observation room, Jack felt his world turn upside down. What? Roberts pressed on. According to these documents, Thompson, your father, found out about the early embezzlement 5 years before he died. But instead of turning you in, he saw an opportunity, Michael finished, his voice cracking. The great Thompson, the model businessman, the respected philanthropist, had been running his own schemes from the start. My embezzlement was amateurish compared to his. Jack sprang to his feet, needing to brace himself against the wall. Everything he had believed about his family was crumbling like a house of cards. He blackmailed me, Michael continued, tears finally forming in his eyes. His silence came at a price, which he collected until his last day. That perfect inheritance he left behind, a facade. Most of the money came from decades of fraud and skimming. At that moment, a small commotion in the hallway arose. Emily, having slipped away from adult supervision, was insistent on seeing Michael. Please, she pleaded, her childish voice laden with surprising maturity. I need to understand. After much debate among investigators, and with Jack's consent, they allowed Emily into the interrogation room under strict supervision. The contrast was stark. The small homeless girl, now in a simple but clean dress, facing the handcuffed executive in his prison uniform. Why did you want to hurt your brother? Emily asked point blank, her eyes fixed on Michael. The man, who had endured hours of professional interrogation without fully breaking, seemed to deflate at the child's direct question. "Because I was angry," he whispered, tears welling. "So angry I couldn't see anything else. But he's your family," Emily persisted. "When you have a family, you take care of them. That's what my mom does for me, even when it's hard." Michael covered his face with his cuffed hands, sobs racking his body. "I got lost, kid. Lost so long ago I couldn't find my way back." In the observation room, Jack watched in tears in his own eyes. Clara gave his shoulder a comforting squeeze. "You know what's funny?" Emily continued, her voice calm yet firm. "When I saw your brother in that car, I didn't think if he was rich or important. I just saw someone who needed help." "And you saved him," Michael murmured. "You destroyed years of planning without even knowing." Emily tilted her head, reflecting. "Sometimes we need to destroy bad things so we can build good ones." The child's simple wisdom hit Michael harder than any interrogation technique had. He looked toward the mirror where he knew Jack was watching. "Forgive me, brother," he pleaded, voice breaking. I wasted so much time hating, resenting, threw away my whole life." Robert signaled that Emily should be removed, but she had one last thing to say. "You know it's never too late to do the right thing, right?" Her words lingered in the air even after she left. Michael straightened up in his chair, a new determination on his face. "I want to confess everything," he declared. "Every detail, every person involved, not just in Thompson, but every company, every scheme." The next hours saw a deluge of revelations. Michael exposed a corruption network spanning decades and involving some of the country's largest corporations. Politicians, judges, business people, no one was immune. Kovac, as it turned out, had kept his own records for insurance. His arrest in Dubai, carried out with international cooperation, revealed even more layers of the conspiracy. Aurora Enterprises and Castellari Technology faced deep investigations. Their CEOs were already being detained in simultaneous operations across 3 countries. For Jack, the hardest part was processing the truth about his father. The man he had idolized, his model of integrity and corporate ethics, had led a double life of fraud. "Mr. Thompson," Clara addressed him softly at the end of that exhausting day. "Emily and Rachel want to take you to dinner. They think you need a break from all this." Jack smiled weakly. It was ironic how his greatest comfort now came from 2 people who had been total strangers until a few weeks ago. At a simple yet cozy restaurant, Emily insisted on sitting next to Jack. While Rachel ordered, the little girl took his hand. "Sometimes," she said with the uncanny wisdom of an old soul, "we find out people aren't who we thought they were, but that doesn't change who we are." Jack squeezed her hand, tears threatening again. "How did you get so wise, little one?" Rachel smiled from across the table. "Living on the streets teaches you a lot, especially about what really matters." The meal was simple, but for Jack it felt profound. A new beginning with a new family, built not on lies and appearances, but on truth and genuine love. In the coming days, Thompson Industries would undergo a complete transformation. Jack already planned a radical restructuring, focusing on transparency and social responsibility. The quantum project would be developed not just for profit, but for real societal benefit. Michael would spend years in prison, along with many others involved in the conspiracy, but something in his last conversation with Emily had planted a seed of genuine change. He began cooperating fully with the investigations, seeking a way to atone, even if he could never fully undo the harm he had caused. The press had a field day, of course. The Empire of Lies, the fall of the House of Thompson, the angel who saved an empire. Headlines multiplied, but Jack no longer cared. One quiet night, weeks after the big revelations, Jack found Emily in the garden of the house where they now lived. He had insisted Rachel and Emily move in, for both safety and because he could no longer imagine his life without them. The girl was working on a complex puzzle, her small hands moving the pieces with surprising dexterity. "You know what's interesting about puzzles?" she mused without looking up. "Sometimes you have to look really close to see where each piece fits, but other times you need to step back to see the whole picture." Jack sat beside her, watching the pieces click together under her capable fingers. "So what do you think the whole picture of our story is, Emily?" She paused, considering. I think it's about doing the right thing, even when it's hard. And sometimes we find family in the most surprising places. Rachel, watching from the porch, smiled through tears. Jack looked up at her, feeling a wave of gratitude for these two people who had entered his life so unexpectedly. The entire truth had been laid bare, some parts beautiful, others terribly ugly. But as Emily often said, sometimes you need to break everything down before you can build something better. And there, under the Los Angeles night sky, Jack Thompson realized he had lost a brother by blood, but gained a family by heart. The truth, painful as it was, had cleared the way for something far more precious, something no amount of money could ever buy. The night breeze blew softly, carrying away the last leaves of autumn. In his solitary cell, Michael Thompson began his long journey of reflection and perhaps in redemption. But there in that garden, a new family was growing strong, a family built not on lies and appearances, but on choices, courage, and unconditional love. The truth had been exposed in all its facets, some beautiful, some horrifying. But as Emily had taught everyone, true wealth isn't in bank accounts or corporate shares, but in the hearts of those who choose to do what's right, no matter the cost. And so, while night settled over Los Angeles, Jack Thompson, the powerful CEO, learned his final lesson. Sometimes the greatest truths come from the most unlikely sources, and a person's true legacy isn't found in the empire they build, but in the lives they touch and transform along the way. The maximum security penitentiary in Northern California was not the kind of place Michael Thompson ever thought he'd see. Sitting in his cell, he gazed out the small barred window at the yard where other inmates walked in monotonous circles. 3 months had passed since his arrest, and each day brought new reflections on the choices that had led him there. A guard knocked on the metal door. "Thompson, you've got a visitor." Michael looked up, surprised. Since his sentencing, he hadn't received any visitors, nor had he expected any. He was led to the visitor area, where a familiar figure waited. "Jack?" His brother sat at the metal table, appearing both familiar and foreign at once. The last few months had left their marks on both men. Different prisons, different kinds of freedom. "How are you?" Jack asked, voice neutral but not hostile. Michael laughed without humor, gesturing to his orange uniform. "Surviving. Not that I deserve much else." A heavy silence stretched between the brothers, years of lies and betrayals swirling like restless ghosts. "Emily keeps asking about you," Jack finally said. Michael felt a tightness in his chest. The girl who had dismantled all his plans with a single act of kindness continued to affect his life in unexpected ways. "How is she?" "She's doing well. Rachel too. Jack hesitated. "We're becoming a family." The word struck Michael like a punch to the gut, not out of envy or anger, but out of a deep understanding of what he had lost. "You know," he began, voice trembling, "I spend entire nights awake thinking about when it all went wrong. Not the plan or the conspiracy, but me. When did I let resentment destroy everything good inside me?" Jack observed his brother, really observed him, for the first time in a long while. The arrogant, calculating man had been replaced by someone older, broken, yet paradoxically more human. "Dad had a lot to do with it," Jack replied gently. "He set us against each other from a young age. Constant competition, favoritism. He programmed us for this." Michael nodded slowly. "But you escaped that programming. I didn't." "Did I really escape?" Jack countered. "I spent years obsessed with success, numbers, acquisitions. It took nearly dying and being saved by a homeless kid to realize what actually matters." The words hung between them, laden with truth and possibility. "You know what's ironic?" Michael said after a moment. "Emily taught me more about family in 5 minutes than Dad did in a lifetime." Jack smiled faintly. "She has that gift. Just yesterday she was explaining how puzzles are like people. Sometimes we need to completely break ourselves to rebuild the right way. She's still that wise? Wiser every day. Rachel says she's always been like that, even on the streets. Always seeing the best in people, always believing in second chances." Michael took in the words, tears threatening to fall. "Do you think there's a second chance for someone like me, Jack?" The question lingered, heavy with decades of shared history. I think it's a choice you have to make every day from now on, Jack answered honestly. It won't be easy. A lot of people were hurt. Many lives were affected. But if Emily taught me one thing, it's that it's never too late to do the right thing. Michael wiped his eyes with the sleeve of his uniform. I've been cooperating with the investigations, every document, every contact, every scam. I'm turning it all over. I know, Roberts keeps me informed. He said your cooperation is helping dismantle one of the biggest corporate corruption networks in the country. It's not about a reduced sentence, Michael insisted. It's the only thing I can do now. Try to fix a little of the damage I caused. Jack nodded, understanding. Thompson Industries is undergoing enormous changes. We're restructuring everything with a focus on transparency and social responsibility. The Quantum Project. We'll develop it to benefit society, not just for profit. Emily gave me some interesting ideas about how the technology can help homeless communities. Michael smiled genuinely, for the first time in a long while. She really changed you, didn't she? She changed us, Jack corrected, in different ways but just as deeply. Visiting time was running out. The brothers looked at each other, decades of stories reflected in their eyes. Jack, Michael said as his brother stood to leave, tell Emily, thank you, for showing me there's still goodness in the world, even when we don't deserve it. I will. And Michael, this isn't a goodbye, it's a new beginning. In the weeks that followed, a subtle transformation took place. Michael dedicated himself to prison rehabilitation programs, especially those focused on education. His expertise in finance and management soon made him a valued teacher among the inmates. Meanwhile, Jack immersed himself in the renewal of Thompson Industries. With Rachel's help, her teaching background proving invaluable, he developed social programs aimed at education and professional training. Emily remained the heart of it all, her unwavering optimism serving as a beacon for everyone around her. It was her idea to use part of the quantum technology for advanced educational platforms. You know, she said to Jack during one of their evening walks in the garden, sometimes people do bad things because they never got a chance to learn the good stuff. Jack paused, once again marveling at the natural wisdom of his little savior. How did you get so wise, little one? Emily smiled, that radiant smile that could light up everything around her. You learn a lot living on the streets, Uncle Jack. You learn everyone has a story, everyone deserves a chance to tell it. Rachel, observing from the porch, felt tears of pride. Her daughter, forced to grow up so quickly, was now helping others grow too. The healing process was slow but steady. Jack began visiting Michael regularly, gradually rebuilding the bridge destroyed by years of resentment. It wasn't easy. There were days of anger, deep sadness, days when the weight of betrayal was overwhelming. But there were also moments of light. Like when Emily insisted on sending Michael a drawing, a colorful puzzle with the message, sometimes we need to break to put ourselves back together in the right way. He hung the drawing on his cell wall, a daily reminder that redemption is a choice made moment by moment. Under Jack's new leadership, Thompson Industries became a model of ethical corporate governance. The scandal that could have destroyed the company instead served as a catalyst for profound change. It's like a phoenix, Emily observed one day while flipping through a magazine article about the company's comeback. Rising from the ashes, stronger and prettier. Jack smiled, hugging his soon-to-be daughter. The adoption process was underway with Rachel's blessing. They would become a family, a different kind of family, built not on blood ties but on deliberate choices of love. One particularly meaningful afternoon, Jack received a package at the office. It was a letter from Michael, along with a meticulously written journal. Dear brother, the letter began, this journal contains everything, my motivations, my fears, my regrets. It's not an attempt to justify what I did, but to understand it. Maybe it can help others avoid the same mistakes. Emily taught me that sometimes our worst choices can be lessons for others to make better ones. Jack read the journal that night while Rachel and Emily slept upstairs. Each page was a deep dive into his brother's psyche, a journey through jealousy, anger, and finally remorse. You should publish this, Rachel suggested when he showed it to her. It could help young entrepreneurs understand the real price of greed. The idea took root, evolving into yet another Thompson Foundation project, a corporate ethics program based on real-life cases. Learning of the initiative, Michael cried in his cell, not tears of sadness, but relief that some good might arise from his wrongdoing. They discovered that redemption wasn't a destination, but a journey of small steps, small choices, small moments of courage and truth. Emily, in her childlike but incisive wisdom, put it best. Sometimes we have to forgive, not because they deserve it, but because we deserve peace. And so, under the Los Angeles sky, a new story began to unfold. A story not of revenge or ambition, but of forgiveness and new beginnings. A story proving that sometimes the greatest miracles come in the smallest packages. A homeless girl who not only saved a life, but redeemed an entire family. The house was perfect, not too big, not too small, with a cozy yard and a tall tree ideal for a treehouse. Emily ran from room to room, her eyes shining with a joy that made Rachel's heart constrict with emotion. "Mom! Mom!" "Come see my room," she called, her voice echoing off the freshly painted walls. Rachel followed her daughter, still trying to process how drastically their lives had changed. The house in this quiet corner of the city was more than she had ever dared to dream during those years on the street. Jack observed them from the doorway, smiling. "Are you sure it's not too much?" Rachel asked for the 1,000th time. "It's the least I can do," Jack replied simply. "Besides, we're family now." The adoption process had been finalized the previous week, making Emily officially a Thompson. But it was more than just a name, it was the symbol of a fresh start for them all. "Uncle Jack," Emily called from her new room. "Can we really build a treehouse?" "Of course, kiddo, I've already got the plans drawn up. How about we start this weekend?" Rachel watched the interaction with tears in her eyes, seeing her daughter, who had endured so much, finally live a normal childhood was a dream come true. But the changes didn't stop there. The following Monday, Jack held a press conference to announce the creation of the Emily Thompson Foundation. This foundation, he explained to the gathered reporters, was born out of a brave act by a little girl who showed me what humanity really means. Our goal is to identify and support families in vulnerable situations, not only providing immediate aid, but also the tools for lasting transformation. Emily sat in the front row between Rachel and Clara Mendez, blushing shyly as camera flashes popped around her. The Foundation's first major initiative was a revolutionary educational center, combining Thompson Industries' quantum technology with innovative teaching methods. Rachel, rehired as a teacher and now director of pedagogy, was at the program's heart. "We want to create a space where children in vulnerable situations can not only learn but also dream," she explained at the opening ceremony. "A place where second chances are not the exception, but the rule." Emily was the first student enrolled, but soon hundreds of other children filled the modern classrooms. The center offered not just formal education, but also art, music, technology, and entrepreneurship programs. "You know what's coolest about all this?" Emily said during a family dinner. "Seeing other kids get the same chance I did, to change their story." Jack, who had just returned from visiting Michael in prison, felt his heart swell with pride. Even from behind bars, his brother had become an active collaborator with the Foundation, designing programs for financial education and corporate ethics. Rachel's transformation was equally remarkable. From a teacher unemployed and living under an overpass, she was now a respected leader in inclusive education. Her experiences gave the project a unique and vital perspective. "Sometimes," she said during a lecture, "we have to fall very far to find our true strength, and sometimes we need someone who believes in us when we don't believe in ourselves anymore." The house soon became a meeting place for an extended family. Clara Mendez regularly joined them for Sunday dinners. Marina, the nurse who had cared for Jack, became a close friend. Even Detective Roberts dropped by occasionally, always with chocolate for Emily. One evening, while everyone sat in the garden under the stars, Emily made an announcement. "I want to be like Uncle Jack when I grow up. I want to help people." "You already do, my love," Rachel smiled. "You changed all of our lives." Jack hugged his adopted daughter, remembering the fateful night a little homeless girl saved not just his life, but his soul. The treehouse, finally completed, became Emily's favorite hideout. From there, she could watch the sunset over Los Angeles. The same city that once sheltered her beneath its overpasses now stretched out before her like a world of possibilities. "Sometimes," she said one day, sitting with Jack in the treehouse, "I still think about that night, the car, the rain, the fear. Do you regret anything?" Jack asked softly. "Never," she smiled, "because that night wasn't just about saving you. It was about saving all of us." The Emily Thompson Foundation expanded quickly, reaching other cities as well. Its innovative social assistance model, combining technology, education, and family support, began attracting international attention. Rachel, now recognized as an authority in transformative education, traveled around the country sharing her expertise, but she always returned home, where her true happiness lay. "I never imagined we'd have so much," she confided to Jack one evening, watching Emily sleep peacefully in her new bedroom decorated with star stickers on the ceiling. "Sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the most improbable circumstances," he replied, holding her hand. The love between them grew naturally, like a flower breaking through concrete, not a fairy tale romance, but one forged through adversity and rooted in mutual respect and admiration. Emily, of course, had noticed before anyone else. "So you two love each other," she declared simply one day, making both of them blush like teenagers. The wedding was an intimate celebration in the backyard, with the treehouse adorned with twinkling lights. Emily served as flower girl, her white dress matching her radiant smile. Michael watched the ceremony via video call from prison, silent tears rolling down his face as he witnessed his new family being officially formed. And so, under the starry Los Angeles sky, a story that began in tragedy and betrayal turned into a tale of love, hope, and redemption. A story proving that sometimes angels come in small sizes, and the true miracle isn't just being saved, but learning how to save others. Emily Thompson, the girl who once had no home, now possessed not only a home, but also a mission. Her story inspired other children to believe in second chances, possibilities, and miracles. And every night before sleeping, she gazed at the stars through her window and smiled, knowing she had found her true purpose, to be a light for others, just as she had been on that rainy night when she chose to save a stranger. The future was more than bright. It shone with infinite possibilities and unconditional love. A living testament to the fact that sometimes happy endings aren't endings at all, but just the beginning of something even more extraordinary.